Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide as I look at the 1990 and 1991 Fleer football sets. And right out of the gate, I'm going to say this is going to be more of a history and design discussion about these sets because there's not a lot to talk about with the sets, but really it's very indicative of the nature of Fleer at this time and the challenge that they had as they inadvertently walked into a bit of a buzzsaw in the football card market and how they fumbled through reacting with it. It's really interesting to look at them. I think it's interesting to look at them in that lens because the way that they built their cards was very much out of step with what was going on, and it shows the difficulty that Fleer had really through the entire junk wax era to really capture the innovations that was happening elsewhere. It's pretty interesting as far as I'm concerned. But I am looking at the sets. They'll be here in good measure, but there is a fair amount of background to talk about it. And that starts off by the fact that for many people, they see 1990 and 91 Fleer as the beginning of football cards for the Fleer company, which is anything but the case. Some people may be knowledgeable of the fact that they did cards in the 1960s, so they know about those. But really, in 1990, it wasn't returning to football cards because they'd been making cards in 1988. I mean, they'd been making cards from 1976 through 1988, so 1990 wasn't even, it was a shift in how they were approaching cards. That was really the thing. And that's because Fleer was able to take advantage of opportunities that right under the nose of Topps, basically. In the 1960s, they took advantage of the presence of the AFL. And then in the 1970s, Topps was so comfortable with their monopoly that they didn't even bother to pay the NFL a license for cards. So that meant they had to airbrush all the logos, couldn't put any team logos on their cards. They couldn't do team colors on their cards. Basically, football cards in the 1970s were, here you go, this is what you get. That's really the spirit of what we got as collectors. And Fleer was able to take advantage of that because since Topps wasn't paying the NFL, Fleer could. But Fleer was also able to take advantage of something else, which is the fact that Topps had a monopoly not on sports cards, but on player cards. So what about if you make a card that is just about a team? Well, that's perfectly fine. And so that's what they did. Fleer started in 1976 making cards that were team cards, offense, defense, that kind of thing. And they were able to continue to make football cards all the way through the 1970s and through the better part of the 1980s. So you had Topps, even in 1982 when Topps did pick up the NFL license, still Topps was making player cards and then Fleer was just tucked over in the corner making their little NFL cards, and everything was perfectly fine. Until 1988. And in 88, the lead into 1989, things changed so radically that, well, everybody was caught off guard. Because Topps never bothered to invest in football cards. They just didn't really care. They printed as many as would be sold, and they were good. Score, they launched in baseball in 1988, got that set done, and now they were ready to jump over into football, which was a completely untapped market. I mean, the NFL was already the most popular sport in America at that point, but nobody was bothering to care about football cards. Even Topps card sets were all they were afterthoughts. So that's exactly what Score decided to do. They decided to jump into an area that nobody else was taking advantage of and take it seriously. But at the same time, the NFL was working with a startup company called Pro Set to make a card set that really was built around the NFL. It was designed to cater for the NFL. Even we had Action Pack that was just starting to spin up their existence with what really wasn't even the premium card. It was really more of an ultra premium or super premium card. That in 1989 we were going to be getting packs of that, which means that for much of the country there were 4 packs. For most of the country there was 3 packs because there was Topps, Score, Pro Set, and in some markets even Action Packed. That's 4 major sets that all of a sudden, with that coming in 1989, the NFL no longer needed to get a couple of spare bucks from Fleer. Now they could make serious money off of the licensing opportunities. And so it was time for Fleer to basically, you're either going to take this seriously or you're going to go home. And so 1989 was kind of like a retooling year for Fleer. No longer could they crank out team cards. They had to figure out if they wanted to go all in. And ultimately, they decided to do exactly that. So 1990 was when they shifted over to making normal player cards. And the card set that it was an interesting year for them to choose because, I mean, not that they could have known, but 1990 was not a good year for Fleer. There are 3 years that are kind of the gold standards for really terrible Fleer designs: 90, 91, and 95. 95 is a difficult one to compete with, but 1990 was a lackadaisical card design that just didn't inspire. The baseball design, absolutely horrendous. The basketball card design is serviceable. And the football design, interestingly, it's the most intricate and probably the best of the three. Although it would have been a lot better if it was in 1989, because 1990 was the wrong year for these cards. But they've got everything they need. I mean, right off the bat, look at the team color. This is a card that's not bathed in team color, but it has so much team color, which prior to 1990 was almost unheard of. I mean, who did a significant amount of team color? Topps would have a little bit of team color in it, sure, but past that, hardly anybody ever bothered to work with team colors. And so here's the card with a ton of it on it, only it's actually not a ton of it, and it's not really dominant on the card because that white border is so bold. They also have kind of an interesting Lombardi trophy-like silver football for the nameplate. Not that you really notice it, you're aware of it, but you don't take the time to look at it. It's got a couple of glistens on it. I mean, it really is intricately crafted, but you don't ever see it. The helmet is probably the big thing that shows up on each one of these cards. And even the card design, interestingly, is a take on 1989 hoops. It's pretty much the same design. You can't see it. There are a number of things going on, and none of the elements on the card are able to make a strong statement. And the reason I make such a big deal about this is because in 1989, Score and Pro Set were colorful, but that was about it. There was nothing really special about their design, and certainly not with Topps. But in 1990, Score Football and Pro Set Football were in a mad dash to make the greatest, most impressive card ever. And they were the starting shot that fired and began the 1990s. When you look at these two cards, the Score card, tons of color, deep, rich, powerful image there, just a little bit of a team color, just a hint on it. But Pro Set, I mean, oh wow, bathed in team color, truly. The images running off of both sides. And while the Jerry Rice card isn't the most evocative of all the cards, still, these are two cards that stand out in a display case. Meanwhile, on the other side of the football card market, you have Topps and Fleer that were just kind of tucked in the corner. Neither of these cards would catch your eye. Neither of these cards were engaging. They were just kind of there. And so when Fleer came in with their design, it was well-intentioned. They had all the things they needed. They just didn't know how to put together a complete package, at least on the card front. The card back's different. That's impressive. Tons of color, really well designed. The way that they put this card together on the card back, I wish that they had been as successful on the card front. But again, it was the wrong year. Nobody could have imagined what Score and Pro Set were unleashing on the hobby at this time, and so Fleer was going to have to make some major changes, which we'll get to in a minute. But the card set was pretty simple. Basically, it's all the teams are laid out in order of how they ended the season. So the San Francisco 49ers, Super Bowl winners, start the set, and then the last team is the Atlanta Falcons, and intermixed within that are a couple of rookies. Because 1989, the thing that was really big with football cards was the rookies. It completely changed football cards outright. Baseball cards got a few rookies in draft pick rookies in 1990. In basketball, you got a few. In hockey, a few. But in football, that was what it was all about. And so both Topps and Fleer knew they had to have rookies. But they also wanted to be first on the market. So in order to do that, you can't, the amount of time it takes to make a card set, from designing the cards, laying them out, creating the printing plates, proofing them, going through manufacturing and distributing, that's a long period of time. And wherever the draft fits in that is going to define how quickly you can be on the shelves. So what card companies like to do was to figure out who's probably going to be the first cards, or allocate specific spots for rookie cards in a card set, design everything else, throw that together at the end, and get everything printed in a hurry. As a result, there are a couple of rookie spots positioned in teams throughout this set that, well, some of the rookies don't align with the teams that they're supposed to go with, because Fleer didn't have enough time to completely lay out the card set the way they wish. And it's a shame, because you look at this rookie card and it's totally professional. Okay, the image is college uniform, but it looks like this card was extremely well designed, when in truth it was rushed in there, which is why it doesn't necessarily fit the way that you would expect in the card set. Makes it a little haphazard, which is kind of weird, but it gives character. Just after Atlanta, they do have a card that is a specialty card, which is a card dedicated to the MVPs of the last two Super Bowls, Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. Conveniently teammates, which is part of the whole theme, but they had this one distinct card, and then they had a couple of checklists, and that's it. So it's a card set that's a bunch of veterans, a couple of rookies sprinkled throughout, a Super Bowl MVP card, and some checklists. That's it. But the big thing about the rookies is that in 1989, the standard was laid out that rookies had to be a big deal, and the way that Topps addressed it, and to an extent Score did as well, is to have Topps traded, Score supplemental, so it only made sense that Fleer in 1990 would have Fleer update. They did it over in basketball as well, so that meant that you had your 400 card main set, and then you also had a special individual card set in complete set form, where all the cards have a U next to the number, so you know that it's the update set. That's rookie cards, and it's also a couple of traded cards as well. And these cards are players all in their NFL uniforms, so they look like normal cards, no different from any in the set. And that was the two card sets. But Fleer was easing into the space of being the insert card company. That's really the definition that they were starting to occupy, and they'd been doing a good job of it. One of the big perks to how Fleer approached inserts was they didn't do it one per pack the way that Topps and Pro Set and Score, the way that they did it. Instead, they were randomly packed, which meant they were special events, and they were basically the first ones to do this. So that means that in this card set, their insert set, which is their Fleer All-Pro cards, are pretty tough to come by, relatively speaking. You know, you get a handful of them in a box, but it's a 25 card set. Every single position, you have the best player from each position for an entire team, so it's a big card set, and it's going to take you 5 to 10 boxes to complete this set, whereas with 1,000-yard club cards or the Pro Set Super Bowl cards, you're going to complete that pretty much with one box. Here, you had to spend a long time getting these cards, but thankfully, they took them seriously. Unlike the 1980s-esque design or construction of the regular Fleer cards, these do have a papery back, but the front feels like a Pro Set card or like a leaf card. It is a lot stronger, and it has a metallic paint on the card surface that is kind of like a bronzed color, kind of a champagne type color, that gives a richness to this card that is unlike anything that you'd see out of Fleer and out of Topps. But again, it's the kind of thing you could see in NBA Hoops or Pro Set, but it was a very special creation that Fleer took the time to make with a card that, let's face it, is pretty awesome. It is a big field of that metallic paint, and then it has an NFL shield with a portrait inside and then a cutout player on the outside. Just a really cool looking card. So that's what was in packs, and that was the complete set. They did, however, take advantage of the new energy going on in football, and they made a special card set called Fleer Stars and Stripes. This is a card set that I believe is Pro Bowl players, and you can see that the Stars and Stripes theme is on this with red, white, and blue, and the stripes are kind of weird because they're like a barbershop pole. I'll get to that in a second. But they did have some rookies in this card set as well. So they have great legendary players and they have rookies. So they were doing a good job of taking this set as an opportunity to have fun for collectors. But it's more who the collectors were, which again, I'll get to in a second. But I wanted to say that in 1990, they had this card set, and then in 1991, they did it again. But you can see that the design has now gotten really sophisticated, relatively speaking. 1990 was all about flashy, and it was really a 1980s card trapped in 1990. The 91 card, they're pulling it in and trying to make a really formal and special looking card. But the big thing I want to talk about with these is actually how they were packaged. And the reason I waited till 1991 is here is a picture of the packaging for the 1991 box. And you'll notice that it comes with candy canes. Hence, when you look at the 1990 design, you'll notice that on the sides, that's what they have. They have 2 candy canes on either side. And in the 1991 box set, where the candy canes are contained within, there's nothing special about the presentation. But the 1990 release was an open box, or a box with an open window, where inside you could see the pack of cards, and you could see the 2 candy canes on either side, which again, when you look at the design of the 1990 card, you'll notice that that's literally the design. It's a card with 2 candy canes on either side. The packaging came the same way as the card, which is really cool. Now, I'm not showing you a picture of it for a specific reason, which is that this is 35 years later. And in 35 years, sugar doesn't hold up too well. I mean, if you have it sealed, it's perfectly fine. But candy cane wrappers aren't designed for 35 years. And if you get a little bit of oxygen and a little bit of moisture in there, well, sugar turns black. And so most of these candy canes are black or blackened. So the reason I wanted to show you the 1991 box here, which is the one that I got my hands on, is because I don't know if the candy canes inside are black or if they're actually red, white, and blue. We can't see that, which is good. But the 1990 boxes are almost all blacked out, so it's not great to look at. But at the time, it was really cool to be able to get the Fleer cards with candy canes as well. Definitely outside of the box thinking for things packaged inside of a box. So that was 1990, and then of course the Stars and Stripes. 1991, Fleer knew they were going to have to really change course. And, well, they were needed really to go back into their 80s designs, which were pretty good. So the 1990 design, or 1991 design, they decided to pull some of the, well, they decided to pull more from the Skybox design. The 1990 Skybox card was great because it had a metallic gold border, and then it had that wonderful backdrop behind the player. And, yeah, really, really cool. Fleer, however, had been making insert cards that were kind of similar to that, so they kind of blended the two and made a card that is, well, they succeeded in making a card that's going to stand out. No one's going to miss this card. It's got football field green with a white stripe, which is kind of a nod to the 1986 Topps card, but also the 1980, I think it was 7 Fleer Team Action card as well. It's bold, it's definitely that. But the big thing on this card is the team color fade behind the cutout shot of the player, and amazing cutout shots of the player. Absolutely great. This is a card that is difficult to appreciate for what it really is, because what it really is a great isolated shot of a player. As a team, these cards run together, they don't look very good, but on an individual basis, if you allow it to, it's actually a really impressive card. But you got to get past that border, and that border is a lot. Fleer would need to make another change because this was not the right change to make. They made it bold, but they didn't make it better. Now the card set did get cleaned up a fair amount because now they have the teams in team order, only they have the AFC and then they get around to the NFC for the second half of the set. And then they follow that up with, well, they've actually got subsets. The first subset is called hitters, and this is perfect for these cards. Already the design, that strip is kind of cool with the text. It helps the card out a lot. But these cards are perfect for the type of action and intensity that you get with the cards in this particular subset. The score equivalent is good. It's more playful. This one's not as much playful. It's more impactful. So this is probably the one place, well, these two subsets are probably the place where you find the cards actually working. But that's because they have a little bit more going on with the border or the themes around the border. And the reason I say two is because they also had a subset called League Leaders. And this gave the opportunity to really pack in a bunch of star cards. And it's, again, really, for these cards look really nice. Now after this, they got back into rookies, which again are around the day of the draft type of inserts into the card set. They're stuffed at the back, so we don't have to worry about where they align in the card set, but they still have the same theme of the team design fitting in with them. And they're not necessarily the biggest stars because they're reliant more on planning, but at any rate, they had some rookies stuffed in there, had a couple of checklists at the end, and that was 1991 for the main set. Now the update set for 1991 was not a Fleer set, it was a Fleer Ultra set, which actually we're going to be getting back to that. There are a lot of ties across to here. So, all right, inserts. Now the inserts for 1991, there are actually two. The first one is the All-Pro set, and the All-Pro set, you can see right off the bat, is a different design where it still has the same fanciness of the previous year. Still has the gold print. The cards, the construction of the card is still unique for Fleer. It's more about the big picture stuffed into the card, so it doesn't have the elegance. And the reason for that is they used a variation of the 1990 design for an insert set in Ultra in 1991. So they kind of shifted that over and allowed Fleer to be more upfront and bold and trying to capture the imagination of young sports fans, I guess. But the other insert set, well, I mean, Provision, this is a card that if it was more rare, would absolutely be considered one of the great insert sets of all time. I mean, speaking personally, Dick Perez, eat your heart out. These pictures are a lot better. I love the way that these cards come through. The art is very powerful, it's very colorful, it's very strong, it is just amazing. But on top of that, Fleer was putting more energy into their football release because this was their new area where they were trying to do their best to get a foothold in a card market that was quickly slipping out of their hands. In basketball, it was still, now Upper Deck was kind of finally joining, but it was still basically Hoops and Skybox and Fleer, so they weren't as crowded. But in football, the inserts were far better built because they needed to try to, football was chaotic. It was a lot going on, and they needed to work to earn their place. And so these cards, unlike the other ones, which are black borders, white borders, in this case, they have that metallic finish around it as well. So the cards come through with a more elegant look, and they seem like they should be a lot more rare and a lot more special. I wish they were better appreciated. But there is one card that is not included in the set that kind of should be. And it's one that can confuse you because there's also a Jerry Rice Provision card. But this one is numbered 99. And the reason for that is because it actually was not released with Fleer packs. It was in Fleer Ultra. In that box set, the update set that I mentioned to you that they saved for Ultra, the 99th card in the set was a Provision card for Jerry Rice, just before the checklist. So all the cards in the set are Fleer Ultra, but that card says Fleer. So if you run into it, understand that it is a 1991 card, it is a Provision card, it's just not an insert, it's a Fleer Ultra update set, a piece of that set. And it can really throw you off. So that brings 1991 to a close. So the reason I wanted to spend this time, thank you for watching all the way to this point. By the way, the reason I wanted to take the time and talk about this in this particular way is because Fleer was trying to figure out their place in a card market where Topps was the gold standard, even though they were getting buried by competition. Score and Pro Set were surging forward and inventing 90s cards, and companies like Upper Deck would have to try to catch up to what Score and Pro Set were doing. Action Pact was doing its own thing, establishing a standard that would really fit more in with the ultra premium brands that would be coming in 1993 than the premium brands of 1991. There was a lot going on, and Fleer had a tough time getting it right, and they made some interesting, if not outright out of touch moves to try to make it work. But especially with the inserts, it's fun to see what they were doing, and it's kind of a hint to what would come down the road. But in 1992, thankfully, they stopped, stepped back, and said, let's just simplify and let's do a basic card. And that's what I'm going to look at in the next video, or the next video for football. So that's one to look out for. Again, thank you for following all the way through this video. If you haven't had a chance to see my video on the 60s and the 70s and 80s cards, both those videos are up on the channel already, so you can definitely check those out. If you have any questions about this, which I doubt there are very many, there's not a lot to talk about, please by all means ask me in the comments below. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And that's good. So again, thank you.